Okay, now live. So, good evening, everybody. Good evening. Thank you for anyone who's joining me live on my VA Facebook page. Technical error on my Instagram page. Give me 1 minute. Okay, so I think I'm live across Facebook, live on Instagram. Okay, so this is the second in my VA Live Sundays, Lockdown Sunday, where I have committed to broadcasting live across my Facebook page and my Instagram page to give out lots of information, tips, different topics, all to do with the property market while we're in lockdown so that we can keep things positive and keep things moving. So today's session, which should last about 20 minutes, is all about how you can invest and make money in the property market during the pandemic and post the pandemic. Because in every downturn, there's always going to be an upturn, there's always going to be winners. And because we're going through such difficult times at the moment because of COVID-19, the property market is slightly shaken, but there is still a way to invest your money in property and make a good return and benefit from the unfortunate lockdown pandemic season that we're in. So tonight I'm going to just share about 3 or 4 ideas, different property investment strategies that you could use to invest in the property market during this period and also post the lockdown and COVID-19. Now, at the moment, the property market is struggling on the sell side, and there are even predictions of property prices falling by as much as 10 to 15% over the next 12 to 18 months due to the impact of COVID-19, the impact of lockdown, the impact on the job market, the employment market. There is talk of a possible recession, and for obvious reasons, it's going to take a while for us to recover from the impact of what being in a lockdown has done this year. And some people are saying that it may even take up to 3 years for the market to bounce back to pre-COVID-19 conditions. So while we're going through that, while we're in this 3-year phase or 18-month phase where the property market might be stirred and shaken due to the economy, what can you do to invest in property if you're interested in property, or if you're thinking, should I invest? Is now a good time to invest? Is it not a good time to invest? Will I lose money? Can I make money? There are different strategies that you can employ when you're looking to invest, and particularly in this type of season. So one of the things I wanted to share with you in terms of property investment strategies during this tricky time that we're in is people are now working more and more from home due to lockdown conditions, and a lot of big businesses are now shutting down their big corporate offices, and they're really sort of telling their staff to work from home. So we're finding that more and more people who are living in the city, especially in places like London, more and more people are looking to move out of the capital cities and move to areas around it, areas generally within a sort of 45 to 60-minute commute to the city. So what we're seeing is more renters, and I think this will be more and more and more in the months to come. More renters, more people will be looking to move away from spending a lot of money on rent in the city, particularly in the south, and start moving to other areas such as Luton, Kent, Essex, St Albans, to save money on rent and also to get properties with gardens. So if you're thinking about investing, or you're looking at investing in property, look at areas that are within, I would say, a 15-minute commute to London, should in case somebody does need to travel to London for work. Those areas are going to become more and more and more of a hotspot over the next 6 to 12 months due to more commuters looking to move away from the city, to save money on rent, to have gardens, and be able to still get to London within less than an hour should they need to attend meetings. So property hotspots within a 15-minute commuting distance of London are locations that you will need to look at, because that's what's going to be on the rise for renters. Another thing that you need to look at in terms of investing in property over this time and making money out of it long term is look for properties that you can change in size. So 2 beds are very, very popular, but if you haven't got a budget to purchase a 2-bedroom property, why not look for a 1-bedroom apartment, a 1-bedroom flat, or maisonette? But look for something that has a good sized kitchen and a very good sized living room. And the reason why I say this is if you look for a one bedroom apartment that has a good sized kitchen and a very, very large ish living room, what you could do is actually change the living room of that one bedroom property into a kitchen dining space. So that living room now is no longer a living room, but it becomes a kitchen dining space. And the original kitchen in the property, you now take that out, shut that down, and you change that to the second bedroom. So what you're actually doing is taking a one bedroom footprint property and you're changing it into a two bedroom property, which means that you'd be able to get more rent from renters because you'd obviously be marketing the property as a two bed. So you've gone from buying a one bedroom property, taking the living room, changing the living room into a kitchen lounge space, which is very, very on trend these days, and using the original kitchen that was in that property and taking that into the second bedroom. So you've now turned your one bedroom investment money into a two bedroom property, which you'll be able to rent for more rent and get more return on your investment. So that's one way that you can invest in property wisely during this season and make your money work harder for you. Another property type that's really in demand, and I always get asked a lot in the business, what should I buy? What do people want? What are people renting from an investment point of view? And I think this works in whatever area you're buying in, but buy or look for properties that we call two up, two down. So buy properties that are two bedroom properties that also have two living spaces downstairs, like a dining room and a separate living room. Two up, two down properties are very, very popular with people renting in the rental market. And of course, if you're investing in property, you're looking for tenants. So you need to look for what tenants want. And if you purchase a two up, two down type of property, what you're then doing is opening up your market to different types of renters. So you could have a single professional who needs more space, like a bedroom and a study. You could be renting to a family, a small family with one or two children. They would fit nicely into a two up, two down. You could be renting to professional sharers, siblings, cousins living together. So the two up, two down footprint is always a good investment strategy when you're looking at what type of property to buy. So something with two bedrooms and two living spaces, you will then open up your rented market, which is where your return is going to come from, into sort of two or three different types of tenancy groups. I see some questions coming through. I'll definitely try and come back to those at the end. So that's another footprint style of an investment property that would do really well in this market and beyond. Another way to invest in property during these times is to look at something called the HMO strategy, which stands for house in multiple occupancy. So these are properties where you take for example, three-bedroom house and you turn it into a five or a six-bedroom property, which you would then want to go on to rent as rooms. Because what we think will come over the next 6 to 12 to 18 months due to COVID-19 is a lot of professionals may need to save money, where jobs have changed, where status of employment or salaries have changed. You will find a lot of young and up and coming professionals potentially not wanting to take whole apartments on their own and spend that much more money on rent and bills, but they'll be looking for professional, clean, well put together house shares where they can rent a room in the house, especially if the rooms have ensuite bathrooms, and they can have basically an all-inclusive rent that includes their rent, their bills, their Wi-Fi, their TV license to save on money. So this type of property, I think, in the next 6 to 12 months is going to become more and more popular on the market because you're going to see people looking to save money. There is going to be, unfortunately, an effect on people's finances due to COVID-19. And one of the things that people will do to sort of bounce back will be to cut down their expenditure, which means single professionals want to move into what we call professional house shares. So a house in multiple occupancy is another type of property investment that will be on the rise in the next coming 12 months. And that is basically where you take a house. Ideally, you want to do nothing less than a five-bedroom house. Otherwise, the return by the time you pay for the bills and the expenses may not be where you need it to be. And then you would have to have that property licensed. A HMO is a whole different type of investment, and I could probably do a whole session on HMOs by itself. But basically, the concept is taking a house and renting it out as individual rooms, and then you're looking for the professional market, which we think in the coming time will probably start to look to downsize and save money on rent and then move into professional house shares. Another investment strategy, again, for in this kind of market, because a lot of people say to me, I'd like to buy an investment property, I'd like to, get into the property market, but I don't have the funds. Now, another way you can get into the property market if you don't have a deposit or you're not able to obtain a mortgage is potentially look at something called rent to rent. Now, rent to rent is another investment strategy that has been on the market for probably about 8 to 10 years now and is becoming more and more popular. And what rent to rent means is you basically rent a property from a landlord, and in turn, you would then rent that property on for a profit in between. So, for example, a landlord may rent you a property, a two-bedroom property at £700 a month. Say you're in Luton, £800 a month. This if the property was in an older, not so great condition. So a landlord may be willing to rent you their property for less money because you would then put the work in and the money in to do the property up. And then in turn, you would flip that property and you would rent it out. So you would then rent it out on the market for say 950 or 975, which means you would make the profit in between what you would pay your landlord and what your clients are paying you. So the rent to rent strategy is becoming more and more popular for people who want to get into the property market, but they may not have a deposit. They may not have the credit background to be able to buy a property to invest in. So you can look at a strategy called rent to rent. The type of landlords that would be willing to rent you their property for you to then effectively make a business out of it are landlords probably who have very low mortgages, potentially landlords whose properties have been on the market for a very long time. The properties are usually not in the best condition, and the landlords do not have that money or don't want to spend the money to put the property up to today's standard. Now, the way to find these properties is usually if you go on somewhere like Rightmove or you go on Zoopla and do a property search in the area you're interested in, sorry, and then look for properties that have been on the market for the longest time available. So usually when you're on the property website, they will show you properties that have just been added, and it'll all be the recent properties that would come up first. What you want to do is go into the search criteria and flip the search criteria and search for properties that have been on the market the longest, because then that will then show you properties that have been on the market 6 months, 5 months, sometimes even 8 months. You want to start from the properties that have been on the market for the longest time possible, because then you're going to be potentially looking at landlords who will be becoming more and more desperate to rent their property out, more and more desperate to do something with that property, and they would be more encouraged and more open to look at different types of propositions. So when people come to us looking for properties, they tend to, for rent to rent properties, they tend to look at the properties that we've had on the market for a very long time, and then they tend to try and negotiate with us and put themselves forward for someone who wants to rent that property for a lesser price, who in turn will spend the money. Usually it's painting, decorating, fixing the garden. It's usually light cosmetic work that you put into the property so that you can then flip it out and rent it on. So you generally want to look for a property if you're looking at rent to rent that has a decent kitchen. Doesn't have to be the most modern, but it should be decent, it should be clean, and the same thing with the bathroom. And then you can then spend a bit of money doing things like cleaning, painting, garden work to make that property up to the right standard, and then you can rent it on in turn. And even if you're just making, for argument's sake, 150, £200 in between what you pay your landlord and what the tenants pay you on one property, you take that formula and you perfect it, and over 6 months you acquire 5 properties. You could be making £1,000 a month profit from 5 properties in your portfolio without owning any of the properties. What you're doing is you're renting to rent on. There are, of course, more technical things that you'd need to know and legal things that you would need to know. But tonight I'm just sharing the concept with you. So rent to rent is another strategy that you could use to get into the property market if you don't have a deposit, or for whatever reason you can't obtain a buy to let mortgage, but you want to get your foot in the property investment market. You can do it without actually owning the property for yourself. Um, so like I said earlier, today's just was a quick one, just to kind of give you 3 or 4 ideas of what you can do to get into the property market at this time and post COVID-19 to still make money and benefit from investing in property. So like I said, look for properties that you can change the footprint. So look for one bedroom properties that you can turn into a two bed. And what you'd be looking for there is properties with large living rooms and reasonable sized kitchens so that you could take the kitchen out, make that a second bedroom, and convert the living room to a living kitchen space. Very on trend these days for people to have an open plan living slash kitchen space. So you could do that with a one bed, and effectively you would turn it into a two bed, and you could rent it out for two-bedroom money. That is another very good way to invest in the property market. Look at areas surrounding London, a 50-minute commute. We're finding more and more people are moving out from London and they're wanting to live in places that are cheaper. So they're coming out of London, which are bigger, they get more value for their money, which have gardens. So now hotspots such as St Albans, Hemel, Luton, even going as far as places like in Northamptonshire, all those places are going to be up and coming now as more and more people are working from home and no longer need to live in the capital city of London, which we all know is very, very nice, but also very, very expensive. So you can look at areas now surrounding London, try and keep it within a 50-minute commute to purchase a property investment, because you will find a tenant who will want to live that side, yet commute in London to London once a month, once every 2 weeks for meetings. So those are a little couple of top tips from VA this Sunday evening during lockdown season, just to sort of let you know and explain how you can invest in the property market and still do well in this current climate. At the moment, it is a buyer's market because um, things are not selling as quickly as they once were due to lockdown, due to Brexit. There's so much pressure on the property market at the moment that the buyer does have the upper hand. So if you are looking to purchase, it is a buyer's market. You can take advantage of that. You can put in cheeky offers and see where the vendor will go with it, because at the end of the day, the vendor wants to sell. And at the moment, the power is in the hand of the buyer. So go for it. You know, now is as good a time as any to invest in property. So it's all about doing your due diligence, looking online, speak to local agents. We have a lot of knowledge as to what's selling, what's renting, what the valuations are. So always speak to agents. We are there to give the information out because also we want to attract you as a client. So do speak to us, do tap in and take what we're saying about the local market, because we see it firsthand. And as long as you do your due diligence and you apply some of the strategies that I've spoken about this evening, you can and will still make money out of property. But one thing I will say in my closing is property investment ideally should be looked at as a long-term strategy. So gone are the days that you can buy a property and think you're going to flip it in 6 to 12 months and make a whole lot of money on the way out. That is usually not the case anymore. You're looking to hold on to your properties, whichever way you buy them, whatever strategy that you employ, you're looking to hold on to properties for at least 5 to 7 years for you to see a reasonable return on your property investment, depending on the market and where you purchase. So do always go into property investment with a long-term view in mind and not with an immediate flip. So that's it from me this evening. I think I will just have a quick check if there's any questions, and then I'll close for the night. I think there was a question earlier. I have a question here. Are there such properties available in my portfolio? So we're based in Luton, so we do properties in the Luton Dunstable type of area. We have lots of different properties that come on the market. The market's constantly changing week by week. Things will start to slow down in the next few weeks as we lead up to Christmas. But of course, I can share property links that we do have available. We have some properties that are on auction at the moment, where you can get an interesting buy if you're willing to put in the work and look at certain considerations like shorter leases. So it's just about talking to us, sending us an email, and we will send you a database of what we've got available and also what we've got coming up on our black book. So there's always different things that we can show you. Another question here from Facebook says, do you have any on the market that would be suitable? Depends on what you mean by suitable. Suitable for what? So you've got professional renting, you've got house share renting, you've got rent to rent strategies. So if anyone's got any very, very specific questions, please do send me an email, or you can give us a call. You can look us up on Google to get our details. It's VA Property Consultants, but you're on my Facebook page or my Instagram page, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. So thank you for joining me for VA Sunday Night Live. I said about 20 minutes, and it's been 20 minutes exactly. So till next Sunday, stay safe, and I'll be bringing you more hot topics and hot tips next weekend. Thank you.